Tired of shoes that don't quite fit right? New Mexico Shoes has a solution. Introducing our custom insoles and arch supports made just for you and ready the same day right here in Albuquerque. Perfectly tailored to your feet, enjoy the comfort and support you need. And while you're here, explore a huge selection of top brands. From casual to athletic, we've got the perfect pair waiting for you. Visit newmexicoshoes.com for hours and location details. All right, welcome back to another episode of Writer's Block. I am your host, as always, Journal staff writer Sean Reider. Today we'll be previewing New Mexico's game against Colorado State this weekend with Kevin Lytle. He is a sports reporter and Colorado State athletics beat writer for the Coloradoan. Does great work covering Colorado State. I highly recommend you follow his work. But before we get into that, I do want to get a couple quick messages out of the way. Want to thank New Mexico Shoes for sponsoring our show. They've been a terrific partner. Highly recommend you check out their stores and highly recommend you give them your business as well too. And I also want to implore you all to subscribe to the podcast. We enjoy doing the podcast. We've gotten good feedback on it. The best way to kind of help that is subscribe either via YouTube or any of the major podcast platforms you use to consume the podcast. I also want to plug the bi-weekly live show that Journal staff writer Jeff Grammer and I have been doing via YouTube and X. We do one every Monday at 2 p.m. After Bronco Mendenhall's weekly press conference, and you can find that on YouTube and X as well. We kind of break down what was said during the press conference and, how we're kind of thinking heading into that week's game. And then the post-game show is usually about 30 to 45 minutes after every single football game, home or away, also on YouTube or X. There is an option on both platforms where you can send us comments or any thoughts you have. And we really enjoy the engagement. We love talking with you guys. You guys basically produce the show for us at that point. So we enjoy that, and we encourage you guys to keep sending those messages in. But with that being said, kind of a big game this week for both New Mexico and Colorado State. Let's dive into this interview with Kevin Lytle. All right, today I am pleased to be joined by Kevin Lytle, sports reporter at the Coloradoan. Does a great job covering Colorado State athletics. And we're here to preview this weekend's game between Colorado State, 4-3, 2-0 in the Mountain West, and UNM, 3-4, 2-1 in the Mountain West. I don't think a lot of people thought that UNM would be carrying this record into this game in particular, but after what was kind of I don't want to say a rocky start for Colorado State, but a couple question marks along the way, where is kind of Colorado State heading into this game right now?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say rocky start early on, pretty up and down. I think CSU right now is feeling like they're finding their rhythm, finding their footing. They really somewhat dramatically changed their offense heading into the season, from the air raid that had been sort of the staple for Jay Norvell. And now it's, he hasn't really loved the labels, but basically it's a West Coast offense, really, ground game heavy. And that's, obviously a pretty big transition. But they seem to have kind of found what they're looking to do there, and kind of, growing a little bit of swagger, if you want to say, in the run game. And then defensively, they've been a little better the last couple weeks, after, not great non-conference. So overall, I think it's team finding their footing and finding some confidence. It's, how it is with college age kids, like you need some proof in the concept, and, wins are proof, and they've been able to stack a few of those.
Yeah, and in terms of the offense, too, I mean, from what I've been able to see this year, and it's just kind of dawned on me, and you mentioned labels as well with the offense, too. Bronco Mendenhall, when he was talking about it on Monday during his press conference, said, labels are never fair. If I had to do that, though, I'd say they're pro style right now.
Yeah.
Where, obviously, it's a lot of the branding has been for air raid and all that, too. And, Matt Mumme is obviously an air raid guy for sure. Norvell is an air raid guy. Where has this shift in the offense kind of come from?
Yeah, I mean, Norvell's talked about a few different ways, but, pretty bluntly this week said, hey, we've been the team in the past that, put up the fancy stats, but not the wins go with it. And, that's not fun. You need to win games. And so I think some of it, last year, I think really led to some of this change. CSU scored it a ton. They were throwing it around like crazy. The defense couldn't hold on. He's talked about needing to protect the defense. So I think he basically just decided this is a more sustainable way to, grow and win. I think particularly he's aiming for late in the season where, obviously you could have some bad weather games, all that type of stuff. So I think, it kind of looks like he took a kind of a hard look in the mirror and said, hey, this is what I've been, but I'm not sure it's the best way to win right now, and I need to change that. So, yeah, it's been a pretty dramatic shift because, like you say, the sort of branding of all of it was, for air raid, and, that's kind of out the window now. But, I think as everyone knows, wins are the best brand. So if you get that, everyone will be fine.
And in terms of that personnel, in terms of the offense, I should say, the guy that's kind of standing out in the personnel and allowing all this to happen and make it more ground heavy, obviously Avery Morrow has been really good from a lot of what I've seen so far. How have you seen him blossom into this role more or less?
Yeah, he had a pretty good season 2 years ago for CSU. I think is just shy of 1,000 yards. And then last year, basically was a non-factor. He had some off the field trouble, was not in the best shape of his life either. Came back really focused and dedicated for this season. And, he wasn't the starting back at the start of the year. Honestly, he was probably number 3 on the depth chart at the start of the season, I would say. But combo of a little bit of injury and him just taking advantage of opportunities, he's just taken over. And, yeah, he runs really physically, aggressively. And he's also, I think, added speed back into his game. He's not going to be like the fastest back you'll ever see, but when he gets those holes, he can break away a little bit. So he's been, really taking advantage of, truly a second opportunity that he got. And yeah, he's been really solid, and they just have a stable. It's kind of funny because, like you say, it was the air raid, but they have a stable of really talented running backs, beyond just Morrow.
And in terms of, obviously receivers too, really unfortunate news. I think it was about a week ago or so, maybe a week and a half. Torrey Horton, who will be playing in the NFL next season, is out for the season. It's a huge blow for Colorado State, the Mountain West, college football as a whole. But we saw, Caleb Goody had a good game against San Jose State, I believe. I might have it flipped. Armani Winfield against San Jose State, Caleb Goody against Air Force 2. How have you seen guys kind of step up in his absence?
Yeah, losing Horton's huge. He's, arguably a best group of 5 receiver, probably a day 2 draft pick in the NFL. He's also a great punt returner. He had a punt return touchdown earlier this year. So yeah, they lose a lot with him. But again, this is where you go back to the air raid, days that they've recruited receivers well. Winfield's a guy that came over from Baylor, a former 4-star recruit. He's been up and down. But I think the best sign is when Horton went down 2 weeks ago against San Jose State, Winfield broke out in that second half. So he has all the talent in the world. It's just about consistency. And we saw that again last week against Air Force. He had a few nice catches, but then a pretty costly fumble. Caleb Goody's a guy, just absolute speed demon. He is crazy fast. And yeah, that pre-highlight reel touchdown against Air Force. Again, he's a young guy. He's a true sophomore, so you're riding a little bit of the wave of some production, then some quiet moments. So they have talent in that group. It's just about trying to level out the consistency of it. But there are definitely weapons over there, even with Horton gone.
I think I was standing in the same kind of scrum around Jay Norvell at Media Days with you and some other Colorado State reporters and everybody else that was listening to Jay Norvell when he kind of casually just put in there Braden Nicolosi, Kansas State offered $600K for him or whatever to try and get him over. How have you seen with this offense shift and also just kind of more experience under his belt, Braden kind of grow into his role as starting quarterback?
I think the biggest thing is he's starting to tone down the turnovers. He had too many interceptions last year. He was one of those, kind of gunslinger, to use the cliche, if he'd make a big play, but he'd also kind of try and force a big play and lead to turnover. He's been kind of week by week, I would say, getting a little better at that, a little smarter at that. Sometimes it's better to just, take a 3-yard run, when you're out of the pocket rather than try and force a pass or throw it away. So he's getting better at that. I think, again, with the change in offense and the Horton injury, it's been a pretty big adjustment for him. It's obviously a different offense than he was, really running last year. But I think he's seen some growth. He's responsible for a lot of checks at the line, protection changes, all that type of stuff. And Norvell has talked highly of how he's handling all that. So been some growing pains, but I think overall you're seeing some signs of progress and maturity in his game.
from my vantage point, at least in terms of like, picking teams and preseason polls and also just thinking about the league as a whole, when it came to Colorado State this offseason, my big question was kind of, okay, well, what is the defense going to look like, and how is the defense maybe going to take a step forward, or is it going to take a step back? What have you seen from the defense at this point in the season?
Yeah, it's been weird. If you look back to last year, CSU had the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year in Mo Camara, but a bad defense. That's two weird things to have together. The defense overall was not good, but they had a superstar. So you don't have a Mo this year. He's in the NFL with the Dolphins, and you've seen that. CSU's not been very disruptive and getting sacks, not really great getting turnovers. And early on, frankly, it was pretty poor, but the last few weeks have been pretty good. San Jose State, obviously is a very explosive pass offense, and CSU limited them pretty well. I think it was 24 points, and Nick Nash, as much as you can stop Nick Nash, they somewhat limited him. It's still like 90 yards, but for him, that's kind of a down day. And then against Air Force, they pretty much smothered them, and the best sign in that game for the defense was they're really disruptive. A lot of tackles for loss, even a couple sacks, which you don't really get against Air Force, a couple turnovers. So that's the biggest step. They have to be able to get the ball out. It's going to be a unit that does give up some yards at times, but if you can force some turnovers, you'll be all right. So I think that's the biggest thing, is they've been relying on a lot of younger players, in those kind of disruptive type positions, your defensive ends, some linebackers, and you just need some disruption there, and they're getting better at it. But man, oh man, do they have a big test Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say the same for UNM's defense as well. Certainly has another test too. You mentioned that Air Force game. It kind of is, I don't want to say landmark, but it is kind of a big deal. It's a trophy win. It's a game that Colorado State has not won in the recent memory, and hadn't won in Colorado Springs since 2002, I believe. That's what I saw.
Yep.
Just and I saw pictures this week of Norvell kind of posing with the trophy and all that, and other players too. How big of a win was that for this program?
Yeah, it was really big. CSU's been terrible in rivalry games. Norvell had been 0-6 in them. CSU had lost 8 straight rivalry games dating back to Steve Addazio era. CSU had lost 20 of the last 21 rivalry games dating all the way back to Mike Bobo, which is basically what got Mike Bobo fired. So they obviously needed to fix that. Jay Norvell, is a little bit on the hot seat in a way, and it could have definitely gotten hot with rivalry losses. They got beat up by CU earlier this year, and an Air Force loss, especially with what Air Force is this year, would not have been good. So yeah, it was really big for Colorado State. Kind of, again, proof of concept to in what they're doing to win one of those games and get to have a trophy to celebrate. So yeah, not everything in that game was perfect. There's stuff they need to fix, but it's a winning business, and they beat a rival. So I think it is really huge for that program.
When we talk to people around, Utah State and people that kind of cover the program and follow the program as well too, they kind of noted like this is oddly enough that was kind of a big game for Utah State to kind of get where they needed to be. You had to take care of New Mexico. Obviously, they didn't. I don't want to say it's the exact same situation, but for Colorado State, but certainly a 3-game win streak for them and 3-0 in conference after beating New Mexico would be kind of huge. Maybe flip some of the outlook of the season. How big is this game right now for Colorado State?
I really think it's huge. Colorado State has a huge opportunity. If you just look at the scheduling with this unbalanced Mountain West schedule, CSU does not play Boise State, does not play UNLV. Even, I'm not sure San Diego State's a true threat, but they're 2-0 in the league as well, and CSU doesn't play them. They have a schedule gift from the Mountain West gods that you can never get again, most likely. They have to take advantage, and I think it's a huge swing. It's going to be a sold out crowd. If you're CSU and you win this game, you have people truly believing that they could make a push toward a potential Mountain West title game. Whereas if you lose, it's a huge letdown. CSU's lost or beat New Mexico a dozen times in a row. Some fans would say, see, we knew this was all a mirage. That's the type of reaction you would get in a loss. So I think it's a huge swing game. If CSU wins this, the energy is just, taking off. A loss would kind of deflate any of that positive momentum. So I think it's just a massive game for Colorado State to, like I say, if you want to be a serious, top of the league type program, this is the type of game you win at home. And that's not a knock on New Mexico. It's more, if you're trying to be at the top of the league, you win sold out home games, in your stadium against conference foes. So I think it's a huge, huge game for CSU.
You mentioned it a little bit there too. It is a 12-game losing streak for New Mexico against Colorado State, which just feels inexplicable in some ways.
Crazy,
that it's gone that long too. I don't even know how long you've been covering CSU. But
that had started before I was on it. That's for sure.
But I mean, just to kind of think about that 12-game losing streak as well too. Are Colorado State players and coaches cognizant of it? Do they care about it? How do they approach it?
Yeah, I think generally aware, but the teams didn't play last year. A lot of these players have never played a New Mexico game, or if they have, it's been one. So for them, it doesn't matter in that way. They don't really have that history. But it is funny because, to be frank, there have been some poor CSU teams that won that game. It's sort of been the joke that, playing New Mexico is the tonic for whatever's ailing CSU. But it's just weird how it's happened, because I don't feel like those matchups have all lined up that should be a dozen straight in the series. But it's just odd how it happened. But for this team, I don't think they probably broadly know it, but I don't think it's really in their heads very much.
And you mentioned a little bit too earlier, and I saw a little bit of this at the start of the season too, and some of the results there as well, that, Jay Norvell isn't quite on like a piping hot seat, but it's a little warm, and winning's going to cool it down for sure. And they have the path to do so. Where are fans in terms of, approaching and kind of thinking about Norvell's third year right now with the 2-game win streak and the kind of the rocky start in mind?
Yeah, I'd say it's still a little bit skeptical because, the Air Force game wasn't convincing. That's a pretty terrible Air Force team that, CSU should have run away and kind of let Air Force back in the game. The San Jose State win was nice, but non-conference, the Colorado game was a huge disappointment for fans, for everyone, but I think fans especially. And so that's going to take a while to wash out. Colorado State it was a nice comeback against Oregon State, but then turned into one that they let slip away. So there's still a little bit of need to see it a little bit more. So I think there's still a lot of skepticism right now. Skepticism with optimism, if those two things can go together. I think that's a little bit where it is right now.
And then in terms of just, thinking about this game and how things might play out on Saturday, do you have kind of a prediction or thought of how it might play out in mind?
I've really been struggling with what my prediction's going to be. I think this is a super tough game. I think Dampier's the type of guy that will obviously he's causing everyone problems, so it's not super bold of me to say, but I think he's the type of guy that can and probably will cause Colorado State a lot of problems. I keep viewing this, maybe it's weird, but I keep viewing it almost in a basketball lens of like which team dictates the pace of play. If it's, an up and down, high scoring affair, I think that, that's perfect for New Mexico. If CSU, kind of the phrase I've used is, sort of Air Force New Mexico, like, long, slow, grinding drives, eat the clock a little bit, limit possessions. I think that's the recipe for Colorado State in this game. So I still have not firmly locked down my prediction. It feels a lot like a coin flip to me. I think CSU will have to win the turnover battle, which I know is cliche, but I think is especially true in this. I think they're going to have to run it really well. And I think special teams could be big too. CSU, that's been one of their sort of hidden victories, is when they win, they tend to be really good on special teams. So right now I'm thinking CSU in a close one, but I'm very unsure of that at the moment.
And you said, turnover battle is a cliche. It really isn't for New Mexico. The fact that they beat Utah State with 4 turnovers felt like a miracle in and of itself, honestly, because when they've turned it over, they've lost them. When they've won, they haven't turned it over. Yeah. And they will be down. I can't say for sure, but neither of them practiced yesterday, and I don't think it's going to happen. They will be down 2 running backs in Dakari Rogers and Javen Jacobs. So the run game could be a little differently, and I think it will be. I do think Dampier will be passing it a tick more than he's been recently. So I do think that is kind of the big thing there with turnovers and just And I agree with you. The pace overall.
I feel like both teams have been in that of like on their best day they're fairly clean with the ball and therefore pretty dangerous. And on their worst day they're pretty loose with the ball and vulnerable. So it just feels like both these teams, the kind of attention to detail on those type of things is what swings games for them.
And then to kind of wrap it up on this as well. And I haven't talked this about every kind of departing media member covering a different departing school and all that. But in terms of Colorado State going to the Pac-12 and moving over there, I mean, what has fans' reception kind of been to that so far?
Yeah, I think overall Colorado State fans are quite excited about the move, optimistic about the move. I think the biggest question mark or concern, if you want to call it that, is the rivalries. I think specifically for Colorado State, it's the Wyoming game. Air Force is, some technically a rival. There's a trophy, but and some people would miss that game, but I don't think people would come with pitchforks if that game's not happening. CSU does need to continue playing Wyoming in football and basketball. I think that will be a big thing. But overall, I think CSU fans are excited. Speaking to New Mexico specifically, I do think people are bummed, specifically on the basketball side, to be losing that. Obviously, it's always a great game. CSU and New Mexico have played a lot of great men's basketball games lately, and obviously the Pit is pretty awesome to visit. And on the football side, like CSU's been winning that game, and CSU hasn't been winning a lot, so some fans miss that. But I do think broadly, CSU fans are pretty excited about the move.
All right. He is Kevin Lytle. He's a sports reporter at the Coloradoan. Kevin, thank you so much for being on today, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Should be a fun game Saturday.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. All right. That was, as I just said, Kevin Lytle with the Coloradoan. I hope you guys enjoyed the talk with him. Very, very interesting game coming up. It would be a huge win for New Mexico at 4 straight wins, and it would be a pretty big win for Colorado State as well. I think that would put them at 5 wins overall, 1 win away from a bowl, and that's kind of the trajectory they've wanted to be on. But before I leave you guys, I just wanted to kind of thank New Mexico Shoes again for sponsoring us. Been a terrific partner as well. And also want to implore you guys to subscribe on any of the major media platforms or podcast platforms, I should say, you use to consume the podcast. YouTube as well also helps for sure. And also want to just plug up the live shows again that Jeff Grammer and I have been doing. Once again, you can find them on Twitter or YouTube. We do them on 2 p.m. on Mondays and about 30 to 45 minutes after every single home game or road game. Regardless, we will be on there chatting and taking questions as well, too. But with that being said, I appreciate you guys listening today. And yeah.
Thank you for joining us. You can find this episode and all our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. If you enjoy our podcasts, please like and subscribe, and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us continue to bring you more content like this. See the show notes for a discount on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading local news source.